Hey guys, it's Troy. Wanted to share with you another one of my fairly recent additions, Wahl Eversharp. This is one that I've been eyeballing for quite a while. The Eversharp Decoband. I gotta be honest, I love Decobands. I have been eyeballing the modern Decoband for quite a while, and they have some absolutely gorgeous materials. The flamenco material, the positano, some of these are absolutely beautiful. And I've been wanting to add one to my collection. And I was at the DC Pen Show, and I saw at one table, actually a bunch of tables, where these were being offered, the Wahl Eversharp Decobands. And I decided that I was going to go shop with Chatterley Luxuries. I've bought from Chatterley previously, and some of the things that they threw in when I bought it, their own branded, their own logo on like a case like that. And they also, because I was walking around the pen show, they threw in like a tote bag. So I've got my own Chatterley Luxuries tote bag. I've bought from Chatterley previously, and I'd bought some Danny Trio pens. Danny Trio actually makes some great pens too, and these are older ones from before, when they decided to go all upper end and have four-figure priced pens. So this particular pen was on their table, and they had several different colors from which to choose, and I chose this, and I'll show you why here in a little bit. Alright, so you got this presentation box. Now, when I bought it, this box didn't come with it, and the reason is, they had to travel all the way to the DC show, and they can't bring boxes for every single piece that they have there on the table, which makes perfect sense to me, especially if you're flying in, maybe even driving in. You don't want to be stuck with all this, so they shipped the box to me later on. So you open it up, and here you go. Pull this right out, and it comes in this little magnetic holder. Now keep in mind, this was empty when I got it, so there was no pen inside of it. I put the pen in it because when I came home from the show, I just had the pen, and that was it. You open it up, and here you've got a manual that comes along with it, with a little bit of history about Wahl Eversharp, some information for you. So you open this up here, and you take out this beautiful baby right here. This particular one was their Gatsby, the Gatsby version, because of the pattern that is etched into this black acrylic. It's definitely a great big honkin' pen, big beautiful pen. I absolutely fell in love with this one when it sat there on the table. And don't get me wrong, I wanted some of like the blue Positano, was something towards the top of my list. They've got some beautiful wood patterns that I absolutely loved. But when I saw this one, I said, that's the one for me. It cost me just a little bit more, like 25 bucks more to get this particular pattern, but I thought it was worth it. Now, the first thing you notice when you go to pick up this particular pen is it's a good, heavy pen. And that's a big pen. I mean, I got fairly big hands, and that's a good size, hefty pen, which is kind of what I was looking for. It's definitely bigger than the vintage. I have 3 vintage Wahl Eversharp Decobands here in my collection, and I gotta be honest with you, they are some of my favorite vintage pens in my collection. So let me go ahead and set this up next to those so you can see a comparison between something from the late 20s, early 30s compared to present day production. Now keep in mind, not every company has operated contiguously or continuously, if you will, from olden days till today. Wahl Eversharp, the modern incarnation, not necessarily the same owners in the same company, but these particular pens are being produced in Italy. As a matter of fact, in the same factory, as I understand it, that produces Armando Simoni Club, is the same company in Italy that produces the modern day Wahl Eversharp Decoband. Okay? So you look here at some of the vintage Decobands that were made right here in the United States. This is the first vintage one that I picked up at the Raleigh Pen Show. There was a guy selling it at his table, and it was like $150 cheaper than I've seen anywhere else, so I went ahead and snatched it up. This is the most recent vintage Decoband that I have picked up. and as I recall, that has a manifold nib in it. This right here came out, and I do believe both of these came out of the estate of Cliff Harrington over time, and I bought these both from Mike Daigle. And this particular pen right here, this blue one here, this absolutely beautiful blue, like a lapis, that has become possibly my favorite vintage pen of all time right here, just because of the way it writes. When I first got it, it did not write well at all. I had to take it apart, pull it apart, restore it, put it back together, and it writes fabulously well. So, that in mind, having looked at modern Wahl Eversharp Decobands, I said, well, I want to get a modern one, and I want to be able to compare. Alright, so let's explore this pen just a little bit, shall we? You look at this cap here. You've got a beautiful gold ring right around here, right towards the finial, and you've got essentially just a flat. It's not exactly domed, but it is slightly convex. You've got that Wahl Eversharp gold seal that they are famous for, especially even in their vintage days. Big, beautiful clip. You got kind of like that roller right there on that clip. And you've got that Wahl Eversharp name right there. You've got that nice Grecian pattern ring here, which is very simple and elegant. I've said for years, black pens with gold trim, simple yet elegant. This one, that's why it jumped out at me when I saw it here there on the table. They had one that was just plain old black, and they had some other colors, but this particular one with the etching that is in it and the Gatsby pattern really stood out to me and was one that I kind of liked. So you got that double band around the wider band here, and you come down, this is a big long barrel, you've got another gold ring right here, and then you've got a little flat, but you know what? See that little hole there? There's a reason for that. This actually is kind of a blind cap sort of thing. This particular pen has an Aerometric filling system. I actually saw some websites that had listed that this was a piston filler. No, it's not a piston filler. It is an Aerometric, and it's not new technology. As a matter of fact, it's called the Chilton filling system. Chilton was a pen company in the 1920s, started in Boston, Massachusetts. And as early as 1924, they were using an Aerometric filler similar to this. So it's nothing new. Now, Chilton, eventually moved on with their company to Long Island and then to New Jersey. But they're not around anymore, but their filling system still is. You know who really enjoyed their filling system? Schaefer. The Schaefer touchdown. So if you're familiar with Schaefer touchdowns, you're going to be familiar with this particular filling system. Let's go ahead and unscrew that cap. Take it off. That's a big, long, heavy cap. And here you have their 14 karat gold Superflex nib. I didn't know if I wanted Superflex nib, and it turns out that's pretty much the only option a lot of these have. You can see it's a great big nib. It is a good size nib, and I'll give you a size comparison on the nib compared to some of the others that I had here, just so you can see what it's like. But this particular nib, they're Superflex. You can go from a fine to like a double or triple broad with it. So it is a modern flex nib for those who are really into that. Personally, I'm not much of a, doesn't have to be a flex kind of thing. And I'll be honest with you too, I don't always like the way it makes my handwriting look. This particular pen, I've used it a lot, done a lot of letter writing with it, and the nib and the way it responds, I'm not really a big fan of how it makes my handwriting look. And it takes some getting used to when you first put the nib to paper because of the amount of spring in it. So you have to get used to this particular nib. But as you look down here, you've got this end cap here, and you unscrew it. Now, I'm going to tell you something about this particular pen when I first got it. This was really a tough unscrew here. This was really tight, and it was tough to turn. Matter of fact, they gave me a rubber grip to be able to use that as part of my purchasing this particular pen. But that's a good long screw there. And this right here was really tough. This was so tight. Should it have been? No. This never should have left the factory for quality control. This was so tough. It was a hard pull and a hard push. It never should have been. So, I knew that probably all I had to do was use a little bit of oil. Well, it just so happens Wahl, I have a set of Wahl, Wahl Eversharp, Wahl hair clippers, all right, and a little tiny couple drops of this clipper oil on it, and then just work it in, and now it goes great. I mean, that was so tough previously. Now, inside of here, and I'm going to show you what it is. What you do is you put that nib down in the ink, and you go ahead and you depress this. I don't know if you heard that at the end. Listen to that sound. Because you get your finger over that hole here when you go to press it down, and you let go, and that's when you hear that little aspiration. Let's go ahead and do this deal right here. And I'll show you the Chilton filling system. Good long screw. There you go. Alright, so this is all brass works, and here, metal on metal here. Then you've got this brass cage right here, and inside you can see that there is your ink reservoir. Essentially, it's like a sack, a clear sack in there. It's probably silicone. Alright, and this right here provides pressure. You get your finger over the hole, especially. It provides pressure, which depresses your filling mechanism or your sack. And then when you take your finger off, it releases, and ink will come up in here. Now, it's supposed to be like a 2.1 milliliter fill, something along that lines. I can tell you from experience so far, you're probably not going to get that. Even just testing with water, it wasn't quite that much. But you did get a sufficient amount of ink. And I have since, obviously, flushed this pen out well. I had put in it originally some Andarillium ink that I had picked up at the DC show that I kind of liked. But I'm going to go ahead and ink this baby up, and we'll talk some more about the Wahl Eversharp Decoband with a Superflex nib. Take a look at how the modern Wahl Eversharp oversized, definitely oversized Decoband, how does it measure up to some other pens in its class in terms of price, in quality, and even size? Well, let's find out. How about a Pelikan M1000 right here? Yeah, that Decoband is definitely bigger. Let's see, how about a Visconti Homo Sapiens? That next to it. A little lower end than that though. Let's go look at the Capless or Vanishing Point by Pilot. I only throw that in because more people probably own that than some of these others. Montblanc 149. And how about a Conway Stewart Churchill? Yeah, that Conway Stewart's definitely a big, beautiful honkin' pen too, with a fabulous nib on it, if you ever get a chance to have one. This particular pattern that you see right here, this is called the Excalibur pattern. But that's how that Wahl Eversharp, and it doesn't dwarf them, but it definitely is bigger than these other pens that are in its class. And like I said, I threw in the Vanishing Point just for reference. Alright, so we were talking about nib sizes here on some of these pens, and I showed you some of the comparable pens that are in that same class. So here you've got the Wahl Eversharp Decoband with that Superflex nib that I told you about. Right next to it is the Visconti Homo Sapiens. Right next to that, the Montblanc 149. Here you've got the Pelikan M1000. And then over here, obviously the smallest, it looks, of the lot, possibly, is going to be the Conway Stewart And so that's a big old nib, especially when you consider how big the 149 and the M1000 nibs tend to be when you go to use them. That's actually a great big honking nib right there. I was going through my ink collection, trying to decide what I wanted to ink it with, and I think I'm going to use this one again, the Diamine Earl Grey. That's not what I originally had in this pen. I had Andarillium ink, and it was like the Colossal Squid Dark, and decent ink. I kind of liked it, but I didn't buy the bottle for me. Actually, I bought that bottle for a buddy of mine because I knew he'd like it. So I wanted to give him that bottle, so I don't even have an ink sample for myself anymore because I had it in this pen. So having swatched it all, I gave him that bottle, and I'm going to use, I think, Diamine Earl Grey, which is probably my favorite gray ink that I've seen. I've seen pen pals that have used this. I've seen some other grays out there. So I went ahead and I bought this bottle, and I've been liking it so far. So I think I'm going to ink up my Wahl Eversharp Decoband with Earl Grey from Diamine. So let's go ahead and fill this baby up. So the Chilton filler. Down, 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 and that should be all there is to it. So, how does this bad boy perform? Well, let's find out. And again, oh, good grief, it's almost a full 2 ounces. We're talking 1.95 ounces all total. You take that cap off, set it aside, because you're definitely not going to want to post that. Trust me. You do not want to post that pen. It's so huge. So let's go ahead and put nib to paper. Like I said, it is it's a springy nib. It's a very flexible. It says right on it, super flex. So it takes some getting used to. And look at this. See how big that pen is right here in my hands. Good, big, heavy pen. Not incredibly comfortable for long writing sessions. I can tell you that much. You will get a little bit of hand cramp if you do it for any length of time. My Mont Blanc 149 is that way. But I'd still like oversized pens. And for sections or portions of a letter or everyday use, I've been doing okay with this. But let me show you a couple things about it. So the Wahl Eversharp Decoband. This is the modern version. Alright, so this one, like I said, has that super flex nib. And what did I put into it? Like I said, Diamine Earl Grey. You definitely don't want to use a lot of pressure when you go to write with it. This is a very wet writing pen. Absolutely wet. Matter of fact, look. Total smear job. I've run across this a lot when I was writing, that this is a very, very wet writing nib. But it's also, like I said, super flex. So you can go from fine to almost, a doubled, almost a triple broad with it. It's a smooth nib though. I mean, it glides right across the page, and it's a hefty enough pen that if you just want to move it and let the pen basically just rest on its own weight against the page, you're still going to get a really decent line with it. But like I said, it takes some getting used to. It's not exactly something that the smaller nibs, and with the amount of spring that's in this larger nib, it's going to take some getting used to. So you're going to have to practice with it just a little bit so that you don't overdo it. I mean, like that, you're going to get absolute fire hose of a writing session out of it if you use too heavy a hand, and you're going to get an incredibly wide line if you're too heavy-handed with it. And the first time you touch it, bounce. It's got a lot of spring to it. but it does still pretty good. I mean, it holds up well. I've had no problems with reliability of this pen at all. It's written first time, every time that I went to go use it. So if you like a heavy pen, if you like oversized pens, if you like flexible nibs, somebody just asked me here recently for a Q&A video about what do I think about modern flex nibs. This is one of them. So if you're looking for that. Now, it comes at a price. I have seen these, now not this particular model, let's say, but I've seen Wahl Eversharp Decobands, depending upon from where you purchase them, go for up to $1,000. This particular pen here was $675 from Chatterley Luxuries. They do still have some on their website, so if you go to the Chatterley Luxuries site, you can check out their selection of Wahl Eversharp Decobands. And just before recording this video, I did do so. Matter of fact, I still have their website pulled up in my browser here on my computer to my left, and they actually have various colors in different patterns. And one of the things, this particular pen, I kind of like demonstrator pens. They actually had the Decoband on their table in a demonstrator, and I'd seriously thought about it. But then I said no. I actually fell in love with this one right here. So I am enjoying the Gatsby version of it, and at $675 for the Gatsby, I thought that was a decent price. Quite honestly, I had looked at other vendors. I had looked at different tables and different versions of the pen, and the pricing that I had seen on these, $700 and up, was very common, $800 or so. So I felt comfortable with the $675 price tag, US dollars, that they were asking for, and having seen them online for a lot more in different colors and versions. There are so many different versions of this pen in different materials and colors that I think you're going to find your tastes would definitely be met. You may not, however, like the size of it, the weight of it, or the Superflex nib that's on it. It's not for everybody. Not everybody is going to enjoy this pen. I enjoy it. I mean, it's fun to write with. It's fun to play with. I don't always, however, especially when I'm writing on lined paper and I'm trying to stay within the lines of how it makes my handwriting look. I just changed ink, and quite honestly, it wrote a little better, I think, with the ink that I'm using right here than the other inks, as far as not really messing with my handwriting. And this Rhodia paper, I have not used it on a Rhodia pad before. I had been using it on some lined Clairefontaine or on just plain old like copier paper kind of thing. So, I like it. It's fun for me. It's a good looking pen. I enjoy the simplistic elegance of the black and gold, the oversized, and the etched look of this particular model. So there you go. If you're into big pens, there's an option.